All right. Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be guiding you through this session. So for the next few minutes, just think of me as your resident musicologist. Today we're going to explore a really fascinating, almost hidden kinship between two of the most monumental acts in the history of popular music. We're talking about the secret shared lineage between Louis Armstrong and the Beatles. Okay, let's just dive right in.
14. Let's set the stage here with a pretty incredible historical anomaly. Picture this. It's May of 1964, and the United States is just completely gripped by Beatlemania. The Fab Four literally had an unstoppable stranglehold on the Billboard charts. For 14 straight weeks, they dominated the #1 spot with massive hits like I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, and Can't Buy Me Love. I mean, nobody could touch them. It really seemed like this brand new era of rock and roll had permanently conquered the airwaves.
But then the impossible actually happened. 62. Now, you'd think the Beatles would be dethroned by another British invasion band, right? Or maybe a young, up-and-coming rock and roller. Nope. They were knocked out of the #1 spot by a 62-year-old jazz trumpeter from New Orleans, Louis Armstrong, a guy whose career was thought by some to be, well, basically over at that point, released a Broadway show tune called Hello, Dolly, and completely ended the Beatles' historic streak. It was just a monumental chart victory.
Now, naturally, the media was absolutely hungry for a rivalry. They wanted this big battle between the old guard of jazz and the new kids of rock. But Armstrong, he completely disarmed that whole narrative. When they asked him about dethroning the biggest band in history, he just smiled and said, "It's awful nice to be up there among all them Beatles." You see, there was no bitterness, no bad blood at all. Why? Well, because as we're going to see in this explainer, this wasn't a rivalry. It was a profound passing of the torch.
Part 1. Blueprint of the Soloist.
So to truly understand how these titans converged in 1964, we actually need to look backward. You see, Armstrong essentially invented the whole idea of the individual virtuoso being the focal point of popular music. Before him, back in the 1920s, jazz was mostly this collective ensemble sound. Everybody played together. But with his Hot 5s and 7s recordings, he stepped forward as a distinct, individualized star, both with his horn and that iconic gravelly voice of his. He was literally the blueprint. And the Beatles, they later adopted this exact individualized star role for rock music. They built their entire revolution on the very foundation Armstrong laid down decades prior.
Part 2. Crossing diverse musical boundaries.
But the connection goes way deeper than just, being the star of the show. True musical geniuses refuse to be pigeonholed into a single genre. And Armstrong had what musicians call big ears. He absorbed absolutely everything. Growing up in New Orleans, he didn't just play the blues. At the Funky Butt Hall, he played ragtime, foxtrots, waltzes, tangos, and mazurkas. He sang Russian lullabies from the heart with the Jewish Konarski family, and he even loved Italian opera. He completely refused to stay in one lane. He played for all types of people, taking in every sound he could find and synthesizing it into something entirely new.
And he defended this open-mindedness fiercely, too. In a 1965 interview, he actually pushed back against these jazz purists who only wanted to hear traditional music. He told them flat out, you've got to appreciate all kinds of music, listen to all kinds of music. He even burst into a scattered version of a melody from the opera Rigoletto right in the middle of the interview just to prove his point. He proved that jazz could be popular music by absorbing classical and dance styles alike. And that mindset, it paved the direct way for the Beatles to do the exact same thing with rock music a whole generation later.
Part 3. The studio as instrument.
Let's explore a shared technical innovation that bridged their generations, treating the recording studio itself as an innovative instrument. Take a look at the anatomy of Armstrong's massive 1964 hit, Hello, Dolly. Producer Mickey Kapp didn't just point a microphone at the band and hit record. No, he arranged and constructed the song in very specific steps to ensure it really popped. Step 1. Kapp provided some nudging and direction, having Armstrong personalize the vocal by singing, "Hello, Dolly, it's Louie, Dolly." Step 2. They realized the track needed a specific flavor, so they brought in Tony Gatasudo to overdub a prominent banjo part. And then, Step 3. Kapp added a discrete layer of strings and a tack piano hammering out the chords in post-production. They were intentionally layering elements to create this irresistible ear candy.
And this brilliant approach perfectly mirrors the exact same technique the Beatles used to build their own masterpieces. Just like Mickey Cobb layered Hello, Dolly, the Beatles were incredibly skilled arrangers of their material in the studio.
Just think of a song like Dear Prudence. It starts with an appallingly basic acoustic guitar, right? But then they continuously introduce new elements into the arrangement, a bass line, double-tracked off-kilter vocals, a delayed kind of sloppy lead guitar from Eric Clapton, and they do it all without ever letting the momentum sag. Both Armstrong and the Beatles used the studio to build entirely new, immersive sonic worlds.
Part 4. A generational musical conversation.
When you step back and look at these two massive forces in music, you see what is truly a generational dialogue. Remember earlier when I said there was no rivalry? Well, here is the big twist of their mentorship. Armstrong didn't just tolerate the Beatles, he actively studied them and deeply admired their work. On a private tape, he actually revealed, "I buy the Beatles. Everything they put out, I got them in my house and I put them on tape." I mean, picture that. In his Corona, Queens home, Louis Armstrong was sitting there taping their records. He recognized their game. He saw that they were doing for the 1960s exactly what he had done for the 1920s. He didn't see them as a threat at all. He saw them as his musical heirs.
Because for Louis Armstrong, music just wasn't restricted by era or category. As he famously said, "Ain't no such thing as styles in music. Ain't but two kind, good or bad." And he honored this lineage, this beautiful generational conversation, right up to the very end. Get this. In 1970, he even recorded a funk-infused cover of John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band hit, "Give Peace a Chance." He was always listening, always adapting, and always recognizing great music, no matter who made it.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. The relationship between Louis Armstrong and the Beatles proves that music history isn't just some big competition. When true legends meet, they elevate each other. They honor their influences, they embrace new innovations, and they absolutely refuse to stay in their lanes. So, if true legends elevate each other rather than compete, whose musical boundaries are you ready to break? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep listening with big ears.